So Peter, we were in Davos for the World Economic Forum. What are some key topics and conversation that you picked up in the main conference room?
So despite the numbers being down, I found it one of the most intense set of discussions. Really three things I found myself drawn to. Number one, of course, ESG and how we accelerate that. Secondly, there were some really interesting discussions around deglobalization. And finally, of course, my usual stuff around tech, AI, data, and now the metaverse.
What was your key takeaway on deglobalization? What was new?
It's definitely coming, but within limits. So first of all, with all the geopolitical issues with COVID, people are absolutely looking to regionalize their supply chains, although of course there are limits to what you can do. But secondly, as we think about innovating to drive ESGs, we've got to be really careful about dividing up the market too much because we won't get the economics for innovation that we need. Katell, you spent your time based at the SDG Tent. One thing that struck me this year was the energy, the density in there was outstanding. It was often more exciting to be in the tent than in the main venue. Can you share with us three of your key takeaways from the tent?
Yeah, so from the tent, indeed, as you say, much more engaged business leader and finance leader, a little bit new. 2 years ago, I felt that the conversation were a lot still about awareness raising on what responsible business means. This year, a lot about action and solution and how to accelerate them. My second takeaway is that most conversations were explaining and showcasing how the frameworks to account for societal progress in business strategies, while not perfect, are good enough to go. The Capital Coalitions, for instance, presented how to integrate environmental, social, and human capital in business cases and in business strategies. So no reason not to take action now. Good enough to go. And the third was like, while there was a lot of focus on the environmental front on climate, the main push was for companies to now become nature positive.
Absolutely. Tell me more about nature positive. I think that's a new term for many people.
So interestingly, a lot of the conversation in the tent, be there about the upcoming pandemic, next pandemic, upcoming famine and food crisis, as well as problems with energy shortage and climate change, were actually connected to nature. And nature positive actually means ways that governments and companies can halt and reverse nature loss. And what was discussed in the tent was the importance to set a clear goal on that. Be nature positive by 2030. The same way that for climate, we have a clear goal of being net zero by 2050 to maintain global warming at 1.5 degrees by the end of the century. The call was clearly made to have nature positive countries and companies by 2030.
So Katell, from all these conversations at the tent, what are you bringing back for action at INSEAD?
So these new topics, like nature positive, tools and practices, need to be embedded in our current curriculum review and new executive education programs. What about you, Peter? What are you bringing back to INSEAD?
Well, with all the hype around metaverse, it struck me how from our early experiments with VR cases, actually I had much more insights than many of the other people, including from Facebook, that were around the table. Super interesting.
So what are two keywords you bring back from Davos?
You'll be happy to hear, on the one hand, responsibility,
right,
but I'm afraid to say the other one, recession. Buckle up. And for you, two key words, Davos 2022.
A lot of responsibility, obviously, from where I was sitting, but also collaboration, interestingly enough.
More positive. I like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.